Today I'm going to share my meatloaf recipe plus lots of tips on how to make the best meatloaf you've ever tasted. You don't need a high-fat cut of meat to make the most delicious and incredibly moist meatloaf. Plus, there's barely any prep. You can whip this together in minutes. I'm Claudia with Eat Color with Claudia. Thanks for coming to the channel and keep watching. Now you want to get like all your ingredients together before you dive in and touch the meat. This recipe is for 3 pounds of meat, but I got you covered. If you want to just have a 2 pound or 1 pound meatloaf, most all these ingredients are divisible by 3. Preheat your oven to 350 degrees. Now your meat, I've had it out. Now for years, I've always used 80% lean and 20% fat for my meatloaf because fat gives you flavor, it'll liquefy, the meatloaf will become moist, right? Wrong. Not when you make my recipe for meatloaf. You can use 93% lean, 7% fat. You can even use ground turkey or ground chicken for this recipe. So keep watching. Now let's grab the rest of our ingredients. You will need to dice a half of an onion and dice it really, really nice and small. And then we'll need 2/3 of a cup of grated Parmesan cheese, 1.5 cups of Italian breadcrumbs, 3 eggs, and 16 ounces of tomato sauce. Get the best kind you can find. And I like to put all my herbs in a small bowl. You know, it's so funny because when I was in my 20s and I started cooking for myself, I would like call my mom and I was like, you know, Mom, how do you make meatloaf? And she's like, I don't know, I don't have a recipe. She goes, I just throw everything in. I was like, oh my gosh. Luckily, she told me what everything was. 3 teaspoons of parsley, 3 teaspoons of Italian seasoning, 1.5 teaspoons of black pepper, 1.5 teaspoons of garlic powder, and 3 teaspoons of salt. And now we'll need a roasting pan for the meatloaf and if you have a large enough bowl to mix all the ingredients, I don't, so I just use a pot because I like elbow room when I'm mixing the ingredients. So now it matters which order you put all the ingredients in. So you gotta listen and watch carefully. First in goes the meat. This is gonna be a large meatloaf because we want enough for the family and we want leftovers. There's nothing better than having a cold meatloaf sandwich the next day with some mayo and ketchup on there. And now all the dry spices. We want to put all the spices right on top of the meat to get the flavor soaking in as soon as possible. And now the onion. And you know, one of my daughters always asks, like, do you have to add onion in the meatloaf? And I always tell her, yes, because the onion adds additional moisture to the meatloaf and adds great flavor. And now the breadcrumbs, which is essential to the meatloaf because it helps retain the moisture in the meatloaf. Now the tomato sauce goes in. Now I always try to get my liquid to go on top of the breadcrumbs because soggy breadcrumbs gives us moist meat. So now we still have some tomato sauce in the cans and we want to add a little bit of water in both of these cans and swish this around. We want to add this extra liquid into the lean meat to replace the juices that would have been produced by the fat. And now the Parmesan cheese. Like the breadcrumbs, Parmesan cheese is a must. And now the eggs, and I always usually pour them kind of like on the side. It's time to mix. I always like to start in with my eggs. I put my eggs here and I just kind of scramble them up a little bit. Get them reach in and mix everything up. Now it's really important not to over mix your meatloaf. That's kind of a common mistake. You just want to mix it until it's blended because over mixing all the meat, it could kind of cook a little bit dry on you. And I'm going to get the meatloaf in my roasting pan and now I'm going to shape it. And looser is better than compact. Since I can't cook a meatloaf without roasted potatoes, these guys are going in. Now it's time to get this in the oven. If you've got a meat thermometer, by all means use it. Takes the guessing game out, but meatloaf should cook to be about 155, 160 degrees. But I can tell you from experience, this is gonna take about an hour. You can only smell this house. We're gonna let this sit now for about 10 minutes before slicing. I am such a huge meatloaf fan. In fact, I ask my mom every year to make me meatloaf on my birthdays. And oh, it's just falling apart tender. And I just love to dip in a little bit of ketchup. Wow. Oh, it's just perfect, perfect. Until next week, y'all, bon appetit.